12,000 miles in over a 5-month period all across the country. And then my current house is a 54 square foot teardrop, sort of like a tiny house on wheels. I went into my first house with no real construction experience. I just knew that, you know, I got obsessed with the tiny house thing, spent about 2.5 years planning it, researching it, doing everything. Finally just pulled the trigger and threw my life savings into something I had no idea what I was doing. Over a 4.5 month period, I built my first house, lived in that for about 1.5 years. Currently trying to sell that house and then moved into this one. I've been traveling for like the last 8 months or so all over the country. It's been an amazing experience to just, you know, live life. It's opened up so many opportunities, you know, between being on HGTV, exhibiting, sharing my house. I think I've had like 18,000 people through my homes at this point, so.
All right, so we'll open it up discussion to you guys now. You have any questions for the panel? Anything about DIYs? Any questions about tiny houses at all?
And if you could repeat the question once you hear it for us? Thank you.
Oh, come on. All you guys are out here, Tiny House Nation, and you got no questions for us. There we go, come on.
What water system have you all figured out to be like the best as far as like efficient? I have a hand pump and like it's really practical, it's very efficient, it's going up, like it's recommended. It's hard to like come in and brush your teeth and all that.
In my house, I have a gravity-fed water catchment system. When it rains, the rain's caught by the house, and then it's kept in a tank that's placed high in the wall of the house. I don't use a pump action. It's strictly a gravity-fed tank. The only thing that I've found that I don't like about gravity-fed is that it has a tendency to clog more than a pump system would. I've had to clean it twice in the last 18 months. So I do have a separate hand pump, just probably like what you're talking about. It's chrome plastic.
Right.
I do have that type pump thing, and yes, it is flimsy. I don't know if they make a chrome one, but the only system I've had experience in is the hand pump and the gravity fed. Gravity fed works great, but like I said, you do have to clean it more than normal.
What I found is when it came time to build the plumbing and the whole water system, my best resource was to go to the marine store. I went to the boat store, said, hey, what do you guys do? Everything they have is run on 12 volt, so it was like a good resource just to walk down the aisle and kind of see what the parts look like, how you can make them all work. So I have a battery powered 12 volt pump that runs from, I have 2 5-gallon tanks, and I picked 5 gallon because from the whole DIY standpoint, I can just pick them up, walk them out, walk them to the grocery store, and get filled up. So it doesn't require external holding tanks or things like that. So along with the DIY thing, I think it's very important to be able to just do it with your hands. And so repairs are DIY, and like the whole thing is whatever hand tools I carry with me, I can fix the van. So it's pretty cool that way.
My first house, it was a on-grid house, so that was hooked up to basically a garden hose. That's where I got my water pressure, everything like that. It's basically runs like a typical RV would. The garden hose runs through a hot water tank on demand. It runs to all the plumbing in the house. Living out of the car and living out of my current house, for the most part I've used gallon milk jugs. It's the simplest, easiest thing. When they get gross or beat up, you throw them away, you get new ones. I do have a 20-gallon holding tank and a water pump in my current house. It's been broke for like 3 months, and I haven't taken the 5 minutes to figure out why it's broke because I just use a gallon milk jug. My thing is simpler is easier. If it breaks, let it be kind of thing. I don't want to mess with it. So the simpler you can, and this is DIY across the board. The less moving parts, the simpler you can make it, the easier your life is.
It's a bit loud in here, so if you can just amplify your voice for everybody.
Well, you're not talking to him.
Yeah. I'm talking to you guys.
Go ahead, please.
When you were building, did you put in insulation, and then after you're living in it, you wish you had done it differently? Sure. Because insulation's like behind everything.
Insulation is one of the most important things in a house. They keep away the water and they keep away the condensation in the house. I insulated my house with Rhino lining. It's the truck bed liner that's sprayed in. So I have a completely sealed system in my house. It's rhino liner, then a thermo barrier, rhino liner, thermo barrier, rhino liner. So I got around R38 insulation. It's very important to insulate. I've had it in -7 temperatures in the winter and 126 in the summer, and it stayed comfortable. If I would have done it any other way, it wouldn't have been. Closed cell foam, spray foam insulation, if you're not gonna modify your house in any way, is the best insulation to go for. If you plan on modifying your house at any point in the future, then go with a roll-up or an easier applied besides closed cell foam, because you can't get it back out. I've seen a lot of houses that are not insulated very well that condensate a lot. Even if they are vented, the insulation doesn't create a vapor lock, water barrier, and the house condensates a lot. So yes, insulation is a big thing.
Again, speaking to the insulation and the whole DIY, I mean, the whole theme of this thing is DIY. So I found it was best to just go to the hardware store and use whatever you can get your hands on. And you don't need to go out and get fancy things. I know someone who uses like space age technology for their insulation, or lamb's wool, or like there's so many different things. But if right down the street they're selling insulation off the shelf, that's what I went with. And that was like, you know, it's made for people with no tools, people with no experience, just to be able to put it up and it goes in well. And then speaking to condensation, in a van, I kind of intentionally left some portions of the van exposed, like the big support column by the window, and there is some exposed metal, and to me that's like a little indicator letting me know if condensation is getting too high. You know, I always keep a vent open, but let's say some night I didn't open it enough, that thing will get a little damp in the morning, and it's just like a, hey, next time open the vent more, keep the moisture out. So it's always a give and take kind of thing.
So my house is slightly different. I'm Hillary. I'm event coordinator for TinyFest, and I have the DIY tiny house over there, Tiny Hill on Wheels. I built it myself, and I used 2x3s for my framing instead of 2x4s, and used a closed cell spray foam in between the walls for my insulation. That's a really high R value for insulation, as well as giving the walls an extra rigidity to hold them in place without any racking while you're driving down the road. I've gone over 15,000 miles in my house, not a van, you know, it's not made for travel, and my walls have held together very well. So not only is insulation good for keeping your house warm, but if you're planning on making an actual house and driving it down the road, this closed cell spray foam actually helps you give a little flex with still being very rigid.
For my first house, I used what's called SIPS panels, structural insulated panels, and basically what that is it's a chunk of foam between two pieces of OSB. For a DIYer doing a tiny house, I highly recommend SIPS. Mine was a 32-foot long, 250 square foot house. We had 10 people who had never built a house before, got the shell up in 2 days. I was dried in 2.5 weeks, living in it in 4.5 months. They go up super quick, and the one big advantage of the SIPS panels is it's all foam. So my walls were R22 walls, R32 ceiling, whereas a typical house is about R14. The SIPS panels are great because you don't have any thermal bridging, anything like that. The one downside to it is, you know, you're not going to be changing it, similar to like the spray foam insulation or things like that. But yeah, insulate your house based on where you're going to be. So my current house has just 1-inch foam insulation, but I built it knowing that I don't want to be in really hot weather and I don't want to be in really cold weather. So that works for me because I knew I went into the house with the intent of traveling to good weather. So design it based on what you want, what you need.
Yes, please.
Do you have insulated flooring?
I do not. Do you have insulated flooring? I don't have insulated flooring in mine. I have silicone strips. I have a heated silicone strip that runs down the length of the floor, the walking floor space, that keeps it warm. I just did a regular thermal barrier on the bottom, a weather barrier on the bottom, 1-inch ply on top of that, and then I put my flooring straight on top of that. So no insulation on the floor.
Personally, I used a very thin, just one layer of Reflectix on the floor. I would have liked to go more, but on top of that I had 3/4 inch plywood, and it was starting to stack up a little higher than I'd like. But I can speak that insulating the floor is very important. In cold weather, you get a lot of cold coming up. Even in the hot weather, if you park on a hot parking lot, that heat comes up too. So something to definitely consider.
I use a lot of insulation in my floor. I filled the entire trailer base with the 4 inches of spray foam, as well as the 2x4s on top of it with more spray foam. So it's a lot of spray foam, and I've never had a cold floor. And especially when your house is raised and you get breeze underneath it when it's been cold, it gets cold. I mean, it has, you know, in most houses, and so having that spray foam in that area really makes the floor much warmer, and I've never had cold feet.
Both of my houses, I insulated the floor. Where you're going to lose most of your heat and cooling is through your ceiling and your floor. And again, especially because you're on a trailer, you've got drafting underneath. That's something that you want to insulate that if you can. Another thing, if you're in really cold climates and you're on a tiny house on wheels, skirt your trailer because that prevents air from getting underneath the trailer, which is going to, cause that cold floor issue.
Would you guys recommend doing heated flooring or just insulation?
Would we recommend doing heated flooring? Yes, I would. Like I said, I didn't do any insulation on mine. I just did silicone strips. Now it does keep the floor heated at anything under 48 degrees. It starts warming the floor up. I have noticed that without the insulation on my flooring, in parking lots, especially blacktop asphalt parking lots, I do feel the heat coming through the floor. So that is one area I would change, or I would have automatically done that in the beginning of the build.
I would say heated floors, stuff like that, it comes down to budget and what's important to you. If you want the nice bathroom with the tile that's heated, great, but you're going to spend more money on it. Mine's 2 inches of foam insulation. That works just as well too. So.
It's also a good heating agent though, because the heat rises, so it sort of depends if it is in your budget. It's not a bad idea as your main heat source. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a 3/4-ton Chevy van, and I live in Oakland, so one of my main concerns is like that bring in. Personally, you're like urban, and I'm not sure what you're doing.
What are some of the security measures that we use in our houses? I went a little overboard with mine because I have a tendency to leave my house out in the middle of the forest and then go travel to another spot. So I want to make sure my house is good while I'm gone. I have a 3-camera security system in mine, magnetic and electronic door locks. And I also have motion sense on the trailer. So if the trailer's touched while I'm not away from it, it comes up P2, the cameras will pop up on my phone.
Do you have a name for that?
I don't remember. The system for the motion sense is actually named motion sense, trailer sense.
What about the door?
The what? The door was a complete DIY build. I bought the magnetic locks separately, I bought the electronic locks separately, and I bought the plate separately, and it took me 2 weeks to put that one together. Yeah.
How heavy is that door? Tell
A heavy door's around 375 pounds. It's a 20-inch door. It's about 375 pounds.
So go through the back wall.
Yeah, you might as well. You're better off sawing through the wall than really trying to go through the door. Yeah.
So in my van, we do have a security system. It's actually Simply Safe. It's a home security system. And it has door sensors, glass break sensors. We have a video camera. And all this goes to our phone, and it goes to different alerts kind of go off all at the same time. But more importantly, I think it's just about parking in well-lit areas, maybe well-trafficked, and it's just it comes down to a gut feeling of like whether a spot is good or not. I kind of understand that a van or a home, it can become a target. So you need to be careful about kind of where you park, when you park, and just understand that you could be a target and kind of act accordingly. I'm always on the defensive rather than just like not thinking about it. So even right now, it's out in the lot, but it's locked, and I know it's okay right now.
Question real quick before we go on. When it comes to the connectivity of that system that you guys both talked about, being able to see it on your phone, that's dependent on some sort of internet service. What are you using to be connected and to stay connected?
With my camera system is a P2 system. It's a P2P, it's a person-to-person system that works within 1 mile of me not being connected, or it works within 1 mile of a Wi-Fi. So if I'm within a mile of a Wi-Fi or within a mile of a house, then I can see it automatically. If not, it has a remote sensor that sends it along to the police. So if I'm over a mile from my house or the house is not connected to Wi-Fi, then it automatically sends a message to police and lets the police know that the trailer's been moved or touched or permitted.
And false alarms, are they an issue?
I haven't had one yet. So I think it's 6 inches, so they have to actually pick up the trailer or load the trailer for the trailer to actually move. A wind shift or somebody coming up and actually touching it doesn't do anything.
Cool.
So I'm the opposite. My house is out there and it's been open all day and nobody's looking at it. My truck's never locked. I never lock my doors. So I'm the opposite. However, I've parked in parking lots a lot and I've never had an issue that I know of. But I don't know. I had like one of those electronic deadbolts with a passcode, and my doors just never lined up in the jam, so it's never worked.
So,
Pure honesty.
Whatever.
I'm more in that camp as well. So one thing that people don't realize as a tiny houser, you can still get renter's insurance. So you can get renter's insurance to cover your laptop, your phone, your camera, all of your expensive goods that covers the interior of your house. They don't need to know that you live in a tiny house. They don't care that you live in a tiny house. It's about contents, not the house itself. So I have renter's insurance that covers my laptop and any valuables. For the most part, I don't have anything of value to anybody. I have my laptop and my phone, and that's about it.
Mostly on your person
and
too.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time that's on me. As far as security goes, so I camp a lot, and I'm out in the boonies a lot. I ordered a boot off of Amazon that you would put on a car. So I've got that on there, and I've got the key bolts, the nut bolts for your tires, and then I've got a wall lock on my car, or on the trailer. So if someone wants to steal my house, they've done a lot of work. They can have it. They deserve it. It would take a lot of work. For the most part, if it looks secure, people aren't going to take the time to mess with it. If you leave your doors open and stuff like that, then that's when you have more of an issue. My house, it doesn't look super, super nice, like luxury tiny house home. So I haven't had an issue, and I've been in it for 8 months, and I go off for backpacking 2 or 3 days at a time and come back, and it's still there. So.
Question on the insurance, for the renter's insurance, you have to have an address.
So it's my parents' address.
Okay, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
So you got to have an address to get that insurance. So you have to have some sort of physical address that you can get the renter's in policy for.
Yeah.
And if a relative I think is unavailable, I just use the actual physical address for my P.O. box.
But how'd you get a P.O. box without a permanent address?
What was that?
I said, were you able to get a P.O. box without a permanent address?
I use my school address.
Okay, yeah. I had used Walmart.
I just got one today, and they actually put their own address as my permanent.
That's your permanent address. I put Walmart down the street.
Speaking on traveling and permanent address and stuff like that, Texas, I think it's South Dakota, are the 2 states that you can have a permanent legal address that can go on your driver's license and everything through a mailing service. So I have a friend who lives in Texas. He lives in a van. He pays this company. It's in Livingston, Texas, like $200 a year, and he has a legal permanent address there. Yeah, same thing. So you can get mailing services that are your permanent address legally for jobs and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Speak up. I'm sorry. Start over.
Insurance. We should also
Do we
talk
know of
about
any insurance
delivery
companies
and
that
shipping
will
and
insure
how you get
our
packages.
vehicle while we're living in it? I personally don't know of any. I don't know a situation where I would tell an insurance company that I was living in it.
I live in Laramie, insurance company says you won't insure it, you have to say you're using it for fun.
Okay.
You're not living in it full time.
Yeah, you're not living in it full time. And in essence, we're not. I mean, it's still our vehicle, but and we live in it. It's only one van lifer. I guess you would be the best one to answer that question.
Yeah. So insurance, and actually taking it back to the DIY thing, which is maybe why those couple is leaving. But the whole DIY thing is sometimes it can be tricky to get insurance on something that you built yourself. And I've run into problems where the insurance company says, "Hey, what contractor was licensed and bonded that built your rig?" And I was, well, I did it myself. So it can be a problem. But recently we kind of took it to the DMV and we said, hey, we want to register it as a motorhome. And they said, okay, that's fine as long as you have these three things: the running water, the toilet, and the cooking facilities. So, I mean, every state is different. Sometimes you'll have problems, sometimes you won't. But I think honesty, like being upfront, telling them what you have, what you're looking for, seems to be the best way to go. But you know, there's insurance experts out there, and I'm not one of them. So,
what's the cost on something like that?
They haven't called us back yet.
So,
not a good sign.
Yeah, right.
In my experience, if you find a company that says they will insure a DIY tiny house, be very, 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 very cautious. I almost got insurance on one of my first tiny house, and was ready to sign the paperwork, and they sent me a stack of documents about that thick with 8-point font, and I was reading through it, and it said there are exclusions of coverage. The policy was $800 every 6 months. They did not cover fire, theft, water damage, wind, vandalism, or physical damage. I called them and I asked them, so I'm looking through this and I'm reading through this, and it says you do not cover physical damage, you don't cover vandalism, you don't cover theft. What do you cover? Well, I'm going to have to send you to the manager. Talk to the manager. Well, what do you cover? Well, I don't know. And I'm like, we're done. No. So if you do find a company that says they will insure a DIY tiny house, read through every freaking word of that paper, because I'm sure that company, people are like, I'm insured, but nope, your contract says you got hit by a tornado and we don't cover tornadoes. So yeah.
I don't have like insurance for my vehicle to live in it, but I have mobile home insurance on my tiny house. I think it'll work.
How much does it cost?
It's $600 a year.
I personally don't have any insurance on my house, but it's only because the only time I ever unhook my house from my truck is when it's here at festivals. Other than that, my house is always hooked up to the truck. So anything that the truck is involved in, the house is covered. I bumped my insurance up to get a larger coverage plan to cover anything I might have going on with the house. But to have a separate one, I haven't even bothered to do it because it's always hooked up.
Yeah, and that's the same with mine. I don't have insurance with when my house is unhooked, it's not uninsured. Whenever it's hooked up to the car, it's insured under my car insurance. So.
Hooked, it's full coverage. Hooked, it's full coverage. Hooked, I get full coverage through Allstate. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I have about 3 extra set of car keys, and each time I've gotten locked out, which was twice, I haven't had access to these keys. They were like inside of me. So where do you all keep an extra set of keys?
I'm not going to tell you that.
I'll tell you.
And what color is your van?
Like under the car somewhere?
I have one of those. Master Lock sells a little 3-combination key safe, and then I have that under the house. So if I get locked out, no, it's under. I mean, it's underneath the house, but it's still a 3-combination safe. I mean, no, it's not visible from standing, and you'd have to get up under the house to see it. But yeah, I bolted it to the frame.
I do something similar. So when I was traveling out of my car, I locked my keys in my car, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and so I ended up sleeping in the bushes for a night because they couldn't get a locksmith out until the next day. So I have a cargo box, so like basically I have a key to the cargo box underneath the car that goes into the cargo box, and in the cargo box I have a lock box that has the key to my car. So again, if somebody wants to get into it, you know, best of luck to them. But
You guys are all prepared, man.
once you sleep in the bushes outside of Flagstaff and it's 40 degrees, you learn.
I just never lock my truck. Just do that.
Yes, sir, please.
This is like you guys did a lot of planning. Was there anything like going through your process of building it that you're like, if I only knew that one thing, it would have saved me like so much more time?
Literally my entire build. You'll screw up so much the entire time, and the best and the worst part about doing tiny houses is you get really good at something the last 30 minutes you're doing it, and then you'll never do that again. So, you know, you're like, this last 4 pieces of flooring I got perfect, and now I'm done.
And I would say it might look like we do a lot of planning coming in. For the most part, my drawing was really just kind of spatial, and I was like, the bench may be this big by this big, but until you actually get down into it and you say, well, the toilet needs to fit in here, so I need 6 inches on this side, 8 inches on this side. It really just becomes, it's a design build process, really, where you can create these drawings, but they're going to change, and so I think I look at it more as like an artistic endeavor, where you're going to see this problem and you're going to solve it as you're building it, and then that may bring up more problems, but it's planning. I wouldn't over plan anything, just kind of have your general layout and just jump right in.